Betty Chikorir, and I work for the Kenya Water Towers Agency. I'm also a scholar in the space of climate change, other than being a state corporation under the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, specifically in the State Department of Climate Change and Environment. And I was very happy to see Ressa come before me, because that's our mother, the Ministry of Environment. The next natural question everybody asks is what water towers are, because that is the mandate of KWTA. The government has given us the responsibility to coordinate the management of water towers. In very simplistic language, water towers are special ecosystems and forests that are sources of water. So if you think about the Mau Forest Complex, the Aberdares, Mount Kenya, Mount Elgon, I hope I'm closer home. Those forests and elevated landscapes that are sources of water. And the wisdom of government is that these are unique ecosystems that provide us water, well aware that Kenya is a water scarce country. That's what the water experts will tell you. So that's basically about Kenya Water Towers Agency. It was created in 2012 and at the moment has 18 gazetted water towers other than the 5 that I talked about. So how do we run this mandate as KWTA? So we have a rather 3-pronged approach, where the first one is to take care of the ecosystems. And one of the things that we do is to rehabilitate those forest ecosystems where we are. We do direct planting, and we have big targets under the 15 billion tree planting campaign, of course. But also, we try and use natural regeneration where it's possible. So that's how you find us involved in fencing some of the really degraded water towers, like we have done in Masai Mau. We've set up an electric fence. The aim is to ensure that there's natural regeneration that's happening, and also to minimize encroachment. Rather than that, we also sometimes are engaged in the unpopular engagement of reclaiming some of the water towers, like we have done successfully in the Masai Mau of the Mau Forest Complex. So that's what we do in the rehabilitation and restoration front. We are also engaged in protection, by the way. We support a joint enforcement unit, which has servicemen from multi-agency teams, Kenya Forest Service, Kenya Police, name it. So they help to sort of enforce protection activities around really degraded forest and water tower ecosystems. The other approach that we use is research, because you wouldn't provide proper interventions if you are not sufficiently informed. So we have a department that is preoccupied with research, who tells us what's going on where, in very simplistic language to use here. And the other thing that they also do is to develop ecosystem management plans, so that it guides the interventions that we do. And lastly, which I in the center of our discussion today, is that we have a whole unit that I lead, that is in charge with, that is charged with community partnerships and sustainable livelihoods. What we do is not only now protect water towers, but also now deploy other community engagement models that not only now rehabilitate water towers, but also support communities in the areas related to climate change. And I think that is what we centered around our discussions this morning. I'll be able to say much more later. But for now, I could just mention that one of the things that we do in a big way is to support nature-based solutions to improve the socio-economic situation of communities. So you will find us supporting various value chains to improve household income. We have been successful, particularly in deploying interventions around the honey value chain. So we have various communities around this country that have benefited from the interventions of honey production. You will find some of them producing high-value organic honey that they sell locally, and some of them international, using the water tower resource as the natural ecosystem where they produce this honey from. We also have interventions around, I had my colleague talk about pasture. So we've worked with communities in asal areas to exploit the pasture production value chain. We've had communities that we've supported to produce boma roads to use in their dry season, feeding of their livestock, as a way of ensuring that they do not over-depend on the fodder that exists in the water towers. We've also been in the space of supporting the value chains of tamarind and baobab, and so many others that I'll not have an opportunity here to describe, but just so to tell you that we help communities to improve their socioeconomics, of course, as a way of incentivizing them to participate in rehabilitation of water towers, but also to adapt to the impacts of climate change. Because like somebody had said, floods, droughts that we have experienced has a way of impacting directly on socioeconomics. People have entirely lost their livelihoods. The other thing that we also do in the unit is centered around renewable energy. So we support communities with clean technologies like biogas, like the use of solar, of course, as a way of ensuring that they don't over-rely on wood fuel, because their over-reliance on wood fuel means that they will visit the water tower, of course, to harvest wood. So we try and do that as well. The other thing that we also do for communities is to support water harvesting technologies. So we've worked with a number of schools and other institutions to provide them with water harvesting technologies. And last but not least is our engagement on environmental education. Our approach is not just specific to climate change, but environmental education as a whole, where we have a program where we engage schools to help learners to practicalize the different aspects of environment. So we support them to set up tree nurseries, to grow trees, and we now have a structured way of delivering this environmental education because we've put together a guide. It was initially conceptualized as a curriculum, but it's a guide that we use to inculcate environmental consciousness among learners. And of course, one of the big things within it in the modern day reality is climate change, where we endeavor to break the very complex subject of climate change to young learners, show them what it is that they can do and involve them practically on environmental conservation. Yeah, so that's basically what we do, I think, in the environmental education front, but I'll be able to, I think, expound more moving forward. Thanks very much. Thanks very much. It's a very interesting session where we are talking now about interventions and collaborations, which is really what we need to do. Because every time you talk about climate change, people ask you, what can we do? It's here with us. What can I do? So the first thing that I would want to start with is the traditional one that we talk about of tree planting. Unfortunately, when environmentalists started this call in the 80s and 90s, before the effects came, there were all sorts of reactions to it. Climate deniers, they said it wasn't there. And nobody for a long time really thought that we really needed to plant as much trees. Wangari Maathai, I think, was one of the biggest person that we crucified when she was asking us to do what we now see is a necessity. So the natural long-term solution to climate change from the mitigation front is actually tree planting. And that's why, and I'd want to start by thanking the president, because I have nicknamed him as the climate champion 001. I think before him, not very many people understood climate change for what he has made us now know, even as laymen. So the very first thing that we need to do as a country, as individuals, is to do that very traditional task of just picking a seedling and putting it in the soil. That's the only sure long-term intervention that we have. And that's why you see that the government now, and Resa allowing me, the ministry is now coordinating the planting of 15 billion tree seedlings by 2032 in a space of 10 years. What this means is that annually, we must deliver the planting of 1.5 billion seedlings. Cumulatively, in the 10 years, the government looks to restore and rehabilitate about 10.6 million hectares. I hope I've helped to break it down. I know we keep saying 15B, and you wonder what that is. So 15 billion in 10 years, 1.5 billion every year, January, December. And to the individual, it's been calculated that if you plant 30 seedlings in a year, by 2032 we are there. So it makes it easy, I think. And I hope even those of us now viewing and watching, as who always keep asking, what can we do? Just ensure you plant 30. Divide by 12, how many in a month? We can work the mathematics. Do we now see that it's practical? Because sometimes when the president and the top level government talks about 15B, we start feeling like a David Goliath moment. How can I achieve 15B? Bwana DG, just 30 in your name. Divide by 12, you can do like 3 every month, and there we go. And you know, we say these things and go away and do nothing about it. Wangari Maathai told us that unless you dig that hole, put the seedling, cover with soil, we are just talking. And it will catch up with us like it has caught us just a few months ago. Eh? So the first and the surest that environmentalists tell us is tree planting. Of course, there are the other mitigation interventions, like ensuring we have clean technology in manufacturing, including moving electric and reducing fossil fuel usage in transportation. I'm just digressing into that because there was a question. There's also even the whole household shift of cooking technologies to clean technologies. So it's a myriad of things that we can have another session to discuss. But tree planting, I think, is the surest that all of us can pick up. The second, I think, speaking from a KWTA perspective, is to support communities to have alternative sources of livelihoods. Because most of our livelihoods as a country are climate dependent. If you think about the rural areas, they're climate dependent. So one of the surest way is to scale up nature-based solutions so that we can have communities exploiting natural resources that are around us, but in a sustainable way, so that they also have some form of income, so that they can adapt better to the effects of climate change. We've done that as an organization. We've recorded a lot of success. Like I told you earlier, we now have communities who are producing organic honey, you know. They can even access international markets beyond Kenyan borders. So if we develop these value chains, and this is now where collaborations come in, madam, because as an organization we can only do so much. I think from our time of inception until now, we've supported communities with about, I think, 3,000 beehives now and processing equipment. But these are solutions that we have tested, they work, but now they require scaling up. So if there are any partners in this room, because you said it's a collaboration, we are saying we have tried and tested methods that can support communities socioeconomically, and all we need now is to scale them up, help them to coexist in a good way, in a sustainable way with the environment. The other one that we cannot run away with are the issues of energy. Because as long as our communities are relying on the traditional energy sources like wood fuel, it means that the trees that we are working hard, Bwana Digi, the 30 that you will plant this year, their chances of them living on are going to be slim. Because my grandmother in the village relies on that tree to do what? To cook, and she must eat, isn't it? Are you going to tell them there's climate change, don't cut and cook? The children have to eat. These are things that mothers worry about every day. So if we now start to think of investing in clean energy sources, and there are multiple ways. We've had now a shift from charcoal to briquettes, for example. Kenya Water Towers has supported some communities to produce briquettes from waste. And as long as it is bio-waste, you can use coconut, you can use wheat straws to generate briquettes, so that you don't have to depend on charcoal and so forth. I think the last one that I'll now talk about is on education. The climate change subject, as you must appreciate, is a very complex scientific subject. And I must own up that some of us who are scientists have done very little to unbundle what this actually is. Because you will hear those of us who are in the scientific world talking about climate change, global warming, greenhouse gases, methane, nitrous oxide, things that are mind-boggling, yeah? There's been very little effort to break down the complex science of climate change and even now make communities, because, I mean, if we passed this mic around here and ask how many of us know the difference between methane and nitrous oxide and where they come from and greenhouse gases, very few of us would be able to articulate that. If you thought about our grandmothers and mothers in the village, they have very little understanding of this complex subject, yet the effects are here with us. So one of the areas of collaboration that I see, madam, is to have a national kind of drive to simplify climate change and contextualize it in a language that people can actually understand. And this could even be having it in our local FM languages. What does climate change mean to Samburu people? Do they have a local name for it? Can they start to have a local name for it? Can they now look at the interventions that they need to do at a local level in their own traditional and local way without necessarily worrying about these big jargons that scientists like myself have to deal with on a daily basis? So that's the other area that I see, because people can only respond when they understand. But now before we break it down to a level that they can understand, how do we even expect them to respond? Yet most of the discussions we are having here are about response. So I think the first and the surest is to demystify and break down the complex scientific language about climate change to the local language that people can understand so that they can respond. Yeah, thanks very much. I don't know if my two colleagues will have a chance to respond, but just quickly to Daktari. You have a chance to become a carbon project developer as Red Cross, because my colleagues might not have a chance. All that will be required is for you to think and contextualize the carbon project development area that you'd want to venture in. And I think off you go. And these are very interesting perspectives to my colleagues that this can actually even become premium that can sort out disasters because it requires resources, a conversation that should be picked up. But you can become the next project developer for carbon. Two, mine were actually really very short. One is to attempt to answer the DG, and I'll say that climate change has taken us to unprecedented frontiers. We had not been here. The people in education didn't think they were affected until children could not go to school, isn't it? People in interior and askaris thought they were safe. People in roads thought it didn't concern them until they require 40 billion to fix roads from the recent floods. What I'm saying, DG, is that this is a new frontier. None of us has been in this space. What I think we need to do, and unfortunately, is that it finds government when we are still operating in silos. Agriculture, their own, forestry, their own, and so forth. And that's why I want to thank Vision 2030 for bringing this conversation alive. We have a National Climate Change Action Plan. You asked for a document. These are things that I think this conversation can help us to set the ball rolling. Maybe in the next conversation, and I really would desire that we keep this going because you are able in your own way to bring government together. Maybe in the next conversation, we can track the implementation of the Climate Change Action Plan and see with its learnings. So please bring us together. It is a new frontier. We had not been there before. Please bring us together so that the agriculture, forestry, roads, and industrialization can have conversations together, and we keep learning. The last thing I'd want to say, because I know I'm on the line on my 1.5, is what Wangare Maathai said, that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago when she said it. I'm sure now it's 30 or 40. And the next best time is today. So let's go out there and plant as we grapple on how we can come together, solve disasters, and so forth. Let's plant. Thank you very much.